Hey, what's up everyone? I'm back to cover this Monday slate. We have 2 games tonight for football, so let's get started. As always, appreciate the like on the video and subscribe if you have not already. Hopefully you guys had a good Sunday. It was kind of a rough one personally. Had a lot of Mixon who really kind of, the entire offense kind of struggled. And then Eckler also didn't really get that much looks with Tyrod Taylor thinking he's like Michael Vick or something. And then some of the receivers kind of got banged up and weren't the same with Henry Ruggs and Deshaun Jackson. But it is what it is. On to today. Hopefully, this 2-gamer goes really, really well. So that would be, really a welcome sight. So let's get started without any further ado. Tonight we have the Steelers and Giants and the Titans and Broncos. Steelers get their quarterback Big Ben back, which is a welcome sight for them and the entire team. Their Steelers quarterbacks were awful last year, Rudolph and Hodges, and they just couldn't get the ball downfield, turning it over too much. Roethlisberger's getting up there in age though, but he's still a pretty serviceable quarterback. He likes to throw a bunch. Last year, before he got hurt, he had basically a game and a half against the Patriots. They were the best defense, as we were to find out last year in football. So I'm not really concerned with how he played. He's been looking decent in some of the training camp stuff, so hopefully that can translate into week 1. And the matchup is just really, really good against the Giants. He's facing off against a really bad secondary. They really don't have anybody. The rookie that they drafted, Xavier McKinney, is going to miss a large portion of the season with I think a broken foot or something. So they're really kind of thin. They don't have that many good options in the secondary. So Roethlisberger does like to throw a lot, and he will definitely have some open guys tonight. So he's my favorite quarterback. He's also a lot more expensive. And then if I'm not playing Roethlisberger, I think I'd look at Daniel Jones, then Drew Lock, then Tannehill. Those are kind of my rankings. Drew Lock is only 5,400. We'll see what kind of step he takes in his second year as a starter. He was okay last year. They kind of really relied on the running game, and then they brought in Melvin Gordon to play with Phillip Lindsay, so I don't think they're going to throw a ton. But it's still a spot where if they get down, then they're going to have to throw, and he's probably still going to throw around 30, 35 times a game. It's just that they are going to rely on the running game, whereas Big Ben is probably going to throw a lot. So for that reason, I think the $1,600 difference could make you want to go to Lock, but I'm still liking Big Ben and the matchup against the Giants. Lock gets a decent matchup against the Titans. They're decent defensively, but about middle of the pack from what I've read. So for me, I'm going with Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. We have some cheap receivers that we can target that you can easily pay up for, like Roethlisberger, and I just feel like Big Ben has the highest ceiling on the slate. At running back, it's like Saquon and Henry and Connor are the 3 alpha dogs that are going to get 80-90% of the work at least for their teams. Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay, it's a bit of a unknown commodity of who's going to get more work. Melvin Gordon kind of struggled last year in terms of yards per carry, and he fumbled a little bit, but they paid him some money. He's going to get his work. Lindsay is also a really, really good running back, so it's kind of a shame that Lindsay kind of deserved personally to remain this full-time starter. He had another 1,000-yard season last year. They just probably wanted some more size in case Lindsay, gets banged up. But they're probably going to do it like a timeshare. I'd say Gordon is a bit safer just because he's probably going to start and get a little bit more work. But, on a 2-gamer, could easily go to Lindsay and hope that maybe he sneaks in a goal line rush. But I think Gordon is going to get more work than Lindsay, so I'd go to him. But for me, it's just tough not to have more interest in these top 3 running backs. And that's kind of what I want to kind of build my lineup around, is getting all 3 of Barkley, Henry, and at the flex, play like James Conner. At your wide receivers, you have some question marks with injuries. With Golden Tate is questionable and Courtland Sutton is questionable. Now, Sutton looks like a really good play if he does end up playing at just 5,600. And then Golden Tate looks really good himself at 47. Both are questionable. We'll definitely know Golden Tate's status. We might not know Courtland Sutton's status before lock. And then you have like Jerry Jeudy, who looks really cheap. And if Sutton is limited or out, then he's going to benefit. You have Tim Patrick, who's going to get some more work, and Deshaun Hamilton. But if Courtland Sutton happens to miss, then they're probably going to rely on the running game even more. You have Noah Fant as a tight end will get more work, and then probably go to like Jerry Jeudy will get a lot of snaps. But talking about these running backs, now Saquon Barkley has a tough matchup against Pittsburgh. They have one of the best defensive lines in football, so it's going to be tough to get like a really comfortable game on the ground going, but he can get some work in the air. He is one of the best running backs in football. If you just give him some space and give him the work and give him the touches, he's going to get you probably 25 touches tonight, whether it be out of the backfield or, catching the pass. And this is probably they're probably going to have to rely on Barkley because Daniel Jones is just not going to have too much time to throw and sit back in the pocket. So go see a lot of dump offs to Barkley tonight. And then Derrick Henry going up against Denver. It's just he's just a monster. Almost had a 2,000-yard rushing season last year. They just feed him the ball. Talking about a guy that could get 30-plus carries on the ground, maybe get a couple of catches. He's kind of been working to kind of improve his game in that aspect, which would be even better for him in fantasy. But he's just a guy that if they get inside the goal line, inside the 5, they're just going to pound it with Henry. Tannehill just also another guy just like Drew Lock. I just don't think he's going to throw that much because both teams love to focus on the running game. And then James Conner, 6,400. He gets Big Ben back, so that's a really good sign for him. Teams were just able to kind of stack the box against the Steelers last year with Rudolph and Hodges just because, those quarterbacks didn't strike fear into any defense. So now with Roethlisberger back, James Conner will be able to have more room to run in the middle. He's going to have he's always a really good pass-catching back, and the coach came out and said that he's going to be their top dog this year, so there's no like time split with any of these running backs. So that's why I like Barkley, Henry, and Conner a lot. I'm going to try to get all three in my lineup. And then wide receiver, you definitely can go cheap. Juju is the most expensive guy by 7,200. If I'm paying up at running back, it's going to be tough for me because if I play Juju, then I'm down to 34 left position, so probably won't get up to Juju. I think you could look at Deontay Johnson at 4,400 just because he is really cheap. He's going to be, lining up alongside Juju on the opposite side. He's really looked good in his first year, even with some really bad play at quarterback, and having a stability guy like Roethlisberger back is just going to help him improve in his second year, so he looks really, really good. Jerry Jeudy looks really good at 4,200, and then see, Corey Davis is questionable if he ends up missing. He's only 3,400, so really cheap, but he's always a boom or bust option because he just don't throw a lot. But he's definitely cheap enough to take a flyer on if he ends up playing. You could look at Humphreys if he ends up sitting. But I like Deontay Johnson. And then I'd say that, I like Darius Slayton. I'd say only look to him if Golden Tate is out. He has a big play upside, but it's just tough to see the Steelers giving that up multiple times. Like, he had a breakout game against Philly because their defense was really bad last year. And then Jets, he had 2 long touchdowns. But Steelers aren't really prone to giving up a huge chunk of deep balls, so I'm just going to go with Golden Tate right now. I think he ends up playing, but we'll definitely know before 7:10. It's just 4,700 is just really, really cheap for a guy that is just really consistent on the offense in terms of just getting some targets, getting, maybe being short-handed with the football, doesn't drop many passes, and he's going to have to rely on some short passes. So instead of Slayton, I think this matchup kind of benefits Tate a little bit more. It's also even cheaper. And then at tight end, I will just, consider going with Noah Fant is probably my favorite tight end at just 4,600. And then I'd say it's Evan Ingram. It's my second guy. And then Eric Ebron as my third guy. Ebron, you're probably going to have to hope he gets into the end zone. Just because Vance McDonald can take some work away. But in the red zone, they're going to probably rely on like Ebron and go with 2 tight end sets. So definitely think Ebron can pay off that salary. But I like Fant a bit more, especially if Cortland Sutton is banged up and isn't 100%. And then defense, it's going to be the Steelers are probably the highest projected defense. They are the most expensive, though. So I don't mind going with the Titans defense against Drew Lock, hoping he turns the ball over a little bit. Or going with the, you could punt with the Broncos. But I think the Titans are my favorite defense at 3,100. And then the Steelers are my second defense, although I do like the Giants because I think the first game has a lot more chance of going off than the second game, where both teams just kind of will go slow and just rely on the running game. But that's it for the DraftKings side. Let's go over to Fanduel. Hey, at Fanduel at quarterback, you still have Roethlisberger as your most expensive guy. It's a little bit closer in terms of pricing. He's only $600 more than Jones and $800 more than Tannehill and $1,100 more than Drew Lock, but just think Big Ben has the best chance of going off, and then just because the matchup is so soft for him. At running back, Henry looks really good. James Conner looks great, especially with Melvin Gordon just being $200 more than Conner. It's just tough for me not to like Henry and Conner, both guys. Especially Henry can get you 30+ touches. Conner around 20 touches, but both guys can get into the end zone multiple times. And then at receiver, Juju is 71. It's a little bit easier to get up to a receiver on FanDuel, so I like him. Deontay Johnson at 59, I think it's a fine spot. Golden Tate is cheap, again at 56. Jerry Jeudy is 52, depending on the status of Cortland Sutton, and then you could punt with Deshaun Hamilton or Tim Patrick, but those would kind of be just in case Sutton misses. But on FanDuel with the extra cap, you can definitely pay up for Juju, and I will do that. I like the Steelers. They're my favorite stack of the slate, especially Roethlisberger, Conner, and Juju on FanDuel. And then tight end, I love Noah Fant at 54. They drafted him in the first round last year, so he kind of had a disappointing first season, but he got an off season to kind of work with Locke and kind of become a bigger piece in the offense. It's going to be a little bit dependent on if Sutton is banged up or not, but he's still going to probably be a second option or third option this year. He's a really good pass catcher. He just struggles with blocking, so that's kind of why he was kind of bad last year. But I think he's going to have a big season, so I think in a young offense, you're going to want to get their young guys. They still have a bunch of young pieces to get involved, and Fant at 54, he looks really good. And then I'll give you guys one more wide receiver that I kind of like right now, and Sterling Shepard. If Tate ends up missing, I like him the most, but right now Tate, he has a questionable tag, so he might even be less owned because people that make their lineups early, they're probably not going to want to put in Golden Tate, but if he ends up playing, then I'll definitely have some interest if he's not going to be limited or anything like that. So that's it for Monday. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and best of luck tonight.